Welcome to Lucky Star Podcast. My name is John Hernandez, and I am the co-editor of the LuckyStarFilm.net. With me today is my co-host Seema Pai, another co-editor of Lucky Star. Hi, Seema. How are you?
I'm good. The dormant one.
Torment, yes, the non-writing editor of Lucky Star for now. Um, well, uh, for anyone who might stumble upon this accidentally or randomly, the LuckyStarFilm.net is a website that we both run. That's basically a website dedicated to cinephilia. We write a lot about subjects and films that we're passionate about, interested in, and we basically do this very infrequently, like once or twice a month. We'll post something. It will get lots and lots and lots of traffic, and just in general, just set the internet ablaze. Um, and like this last week or so, what did we post this last week or so? It was the a translation of
Yeah.
the Jean Claude Huguet
Gige.
film, not the film, the a text that he wrote called "The Gift of Tears." Uh, that's the type of thing that we like to do. Do a lot of translations, do a lot of deep dives into directors, write about East Asian television that no one cares about. That's a little bit about what the Lucky Star website's all about. And I would say that, this podcast is an extension of those same interests. Um, so, but like the website itself, it's not going to be like a weekly podcast where we break down, the latest film that just came out. I don't think we'll be talking about, I don't know, Terrifier 3 or something like that. Um, I don't think so, right? And Well, yeah, and we'll basically do this whenever we feel like there's something worth talking about, like any type of event film, um, anything like that, which we feel deserves time and attention. That's kind of when we'll do the podcast.
Yeah, I
Um,
think it's funny because one of the things you said in your first, like when we were thinking about Lucky Star, but also I think the first editorial note is that we will not be, we won't necessarily be subservient to the needs of covering what is current or what is considered an event. So in some ways, what will be considered a lucky star event might not be what everyone's idea of a lucky star event is.
True. I mean, and we're starting this. The very first thing we're covering is Clint Eastwood's latest film, Juror number 2, which when I was looking at the release schedule for like the rest of the year, and I was thinking, what will we talk about? And Clint Eastwood's Journey number 2 was like the one thing that seemed a no brainer for us. I think that seemed no brainer for us. I don't think we're gonna start talking about, I don't know, Robert Eggers, or I don't even, what else is coming out this year. I don't even. I'm not
Don't even
sure.
know.
I'm not sure
Yeah.
exactly. Um, but I suggested this one. Maybe the next one, Seema will suggest some event film that I'm not aware of, and we'll kind of go from there. Um, I would also say that this podcast is an attempt to kind of revisit a little bit of why Lucky Star exists in the first place, which is the conversations that we used to have, the old podcasts that we used to have like 10, 15 years ago now at this point, now lost to time, sadly. And it's a chance just to kind of revisit that and have some fun, and just kind of have an extension of the website and do something different that we might not do on the website, just because doing podcasts is a lot easier than writing. Um, so, and as an attempt, I think to make this more interesting to ourselves, I think we're gonna introduce a segment. I like naming things. I like giving things names. That's why, like, on the website we have column names, even though I think one of our editors does not like the column names.
Mhm.
um,
Not present right now, so we
Not
don't
present
care.
right now. Yeah, the other part of the Lucky Star New York wing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but we're calling this, I don't know, maybe like news desk or news corner, and basically each of us will introduce a bit of news that we find interesting, um, discuss it, kind of maybe tie it into kind of to issues of cinephilia, things like that. And Seema, I think I'll let you start. Um,
Sure.
yeah, I'll let you start, and then I think I've talked a little bit too much
All
now.
right. Sure. So I think it ties into our conversation about Juror number 2. But prior to that, I mean, if anyone listening to this actually knows me in any capacity, I watch a lot of Indian films, and that's been a very dominant part of what I've been watching for the past 5, 6, I don't know how many years at this point. So one of the things that has happened in 2024, like this is the time of the year when I try to catch up on all the movies I want to see because my rankings matter so much and so many people are waiting for it. So for example, one of the films I was waiting for was Paranjit's Tangalan, which never played in New York City. I don't want to go too much into how depressing it has been when it comes to uh, what I consider important South Indian filmmakers that are making, really uh, very unique films that I mean, filmmakers that have come to New York, spoken at Columbia, etc., and their movies are not getting any kind of release here, whereas a lot of other films from India are getting released here. So I want to talk about that. And Tangalan was supposed to come out on streaming. So it seems to me like there's a couple of things happening in India right now that are very upsetting. Today is a nice depressing day, so I have depressing news to share, which is Tangalan was supposed to come out on streaming, I don't know, a month plus ago, if not more, and kept getting stalled. And a lot of the conversation online seems to indicate that it's because of the representation of upper caste Hindus, specifically Brahmins, in the film. Paranjit is an important Dalit filmmaker, and addresses that like caste comes up in all of his films in different shapes and forms. And so, definitely the both countries had their elections this year. The political situation in neither country that I have lived in about equally. So by now, looks really, optimistic. But it seems to also be just the political situation in India that's keeping films like that from being able to be released in the time or way that they should be. Um, Other films as well, like Dibakar Banerjee has been trying to release his film Thieves for years. Netflix shelved it. Netflix commissioned it, sat on it for years, shelved it, and now it's playing in some small film festival that's happening in Dharamshala, which is literally on top of a cold mountain somewhere. And that's the only place he's going to show it. He's going to do some kind of workshop around it. And
I
even
remember reading in like I think it was the New Yorker maybe had like an article about the situation with that film in particular about how he didn't even know if he was gonna able to release it because of the political climate. So yeah, at least it's being seen in some form.
yeah, but by how many people,
Yeah,
Yeah, and I mean, the effort
and
that goes into making a film and then not being able, and he specifically talks about how he's unable to move on from that film because it's there and he's so caught up in trying to get it shown and seen that he's not able to work on another film quite as easily because of this film
and
just sitting there.
Banerjee is not even like aesthetically incredibly like radical or anything like that filmmaker. He's someone who's
Completely.
working within the mainstream, movies like Shanghai, the
Yeah.
detective one. Those are
Vyomkesh. Yeah.
yeah, they're like the very they're very well
Yeah. They
done
are
mainstream
popular cinema.
entertainment. Yeah,
Yeah, they are
and
popular cinema, family, like everybody goes with their
with
families to
with
watch
some
them.
social critique, and that social critique is like, well, you can't do that anymore. Like any social critique, you can't do it.
Yeah, so that,
Just if
I
you're
mean,
gonna
that
make
was the
movies
news.
like the Singham Cop universe, that's literally all you can do now.
Yeah, which is, really sad to think about. So, uh, kind of the dichotomy of one, I think that Indian cinema is really, especially South cinema, is so vibrant right now. To me, one of the most vibrant cinema cultures in the world, if you really decide to pay attention to it and watch the films. And on the other hand, they are extremely hard to watch because all these films either get censored, and so you never get to see the original version, or you never get to see them at all. On that positive note, what happy news do you have for us?
My bit of news is well, it's something I think we followed on the website for the last year or so, which is the situation going on in recent Argentine cinema with the election of Javier Milei. Kind of the right wing government in Argentina has taken over, and he installed kind of a yes man basically at the head of the film institute that's called Inca, and basically Inca like with that they've basically taken a stance that the Argentine government is not in the business of financing cinema. Like we're just going to take that away. And now this incredibly vibrant, film culture that's going on down there, which has a lot of state support, is basically being told, not our business anymore. We don't care. And they're even talking about how they're gonna like finance like 6 to 8 movies a year, tops. They're they're also Inca's responsible for putting on the Mar del Plata Film Festival, which the programming team left. So they hired two guys. One of them I think is like been living in Los Angeles for 30 years and talking about how they want Mar del Plata to be like a Netflix film festival because they want it to be private money, not public money. Um, and they're talking about like Mar del Plata being like a stop on the Oscar trail. They're gonna bring all the Oscar movies. Like Emilia Perez is going to show. I think it's the opening night film for the festival. Anyway, all of this is happening, and obviously Argentine film professionals are not happy about it because if you kind of go to this, you're kind of showing support basically for the policies of Ed Millet and the lack of funds and financing for the Argentine Film Institute. So they're putting on kind of a counter festival called Contracampo that will take place during the Mar del Plata Film Festival at another location, and it will show kind of all the recent, a lot of the recent Argentine cinema. Um, and like for example, Mariano Ginás, director of La Flor, just confirmed on the podcast that his newest film, which is like another one of his Corsini films that he's done, um, will play at Contracampo instead of Mar del Plata. Um, Marta Mateus's Fire of Wind, the Portuguese film, which was going to play Mar del Plata, actually withdrew. And they're saying because of like all the stuff going on and we're against Milei government, etc., we're withdrawing our film. Roger Cosa has kind of hinted that there will be other films that are withdrawn. Um, but still, Mar del Plata is still going on. It's going to play like latest Hong Sang-soo film By the Stream. It's going to play like the Jonas Trueba film. It's going to play. It has like a focus on I think Japanese cinema this year. They're having a retrospective of this one director. I think Miwa Nishikama or something like that. I think she did like Sway, Wild Berries, Dear Doctor, and those films. So it's still going on, but at the same time, you're having like this counter festival that's basically protesting festival at the same time. It's an interesting it's interesting to think about because I really enjoy thinking about the idea of a counter festival. I know in New York, for example, this last month, you had like the New York Counter Film Festival protesting. I think some of the some of the sponsors of the New York Film Festival due to their involvement or in the genocide in Gaza and all that stuff and how they're kind of involved in that. But that's something that didn't sit right with me because they were trying to get filmmakers to pull out of the festival and say, hey, play our festival instead. And to me, if you're truly a counter film festival, shouldn't be like programming the same things that the other festival is doing. If you're truly a counter proposal to that, you should be doing your own thing completely. And this, I mean, I don't really know what's right or what's wrong. I don't know what, for example, the counter film festival from the lineup I saw, it seemed interesting, definitely. I don't know if they went the right way about it, but I'm kind of drawn to the idea of the counter film festival. And this Contracampo thing, um, it feels like it's putting things to a point where who knows what's gonna happen. I don't know. Like I don't know. I'm very curious to see what will play there because I'm sure like other Argentine films will still play Mar del Plata. I think they've announced some, but maybe they won't be the biggest ones. Maybe they'll be like newcomers who kind of need that shot or want that shot to be accepted into that type of film festival, rather than Marino Ginás, who's already an established name, who doesn't really need it, who can do this counter thing. It's something that I think on the website we've kind of tracked with the interviews to Alejo Mogiansky, and we've talked a little bit about that with Lautaro Garcia Candela. So it's a kind of a recurring focus on the website, and maybe we'll keep doing it in the future. I know our other editor is very obsessed with this as well. um, but yeah, that was my bit of news.
Yeah, I think also, John, you particularly, I mean, not to get too in the weeds about it, but you have written, and I think because of stuff you've been doing over the last year plus, um, you you've written about what you think the role of curation in a film festival is. Like, how do you pick your films, and how that matters to what the festival stands for. So I think I can see why to you the idea of a counter festival can't just be take the movies that don't want to play there and put them here, but something that has more thought put into it about what is it that we are trying to say by having this counter festival in the first place.
Yeah, I feel like it's bringing things to a boiling point. This film festival, and I'm curious to see the lineup. I'm curious to see what the reaction will be. I'm like, well, like because you're not gonna probably stop a lot of things from happening. It's just interesting. I'm very curious to what's gonna happen next. Um, Seema, that was our segment. News desk, news
Yep.
corner. Who knows what it was? Who knows what it is? I have to give it a name. Um, let's get to the reason we're here, um, which is Clint Eastwood's Juror number 2. Um, I'm going to read the log line to this, taken directly from Letterboxd, everyone's favorite website. I'm going to ask you your 4 favorites after this and to put them on the screen. Uh, While serving as a juror in a high profile murder trial, family man Justin Kemp finds himself struggling with a serious moral dilemma, one he could use to sway the jury verdict and potentially convict or free the accused killer. Juror number 2, Simo. This is the hot movie of the year, of the fall, of whatever season we're in right now. I have to say, quite a good movie. I really like this movie. I really like this movie. I remember one time reading, I think it was like A.O. Scott, maybe, or Glenn Kenny, one of those New York guys, who was talking about, hey, how you're in the tank for Clint Eastwood. So you just like praise whatever he makes. That sounds more like A.O. Scott to me. It definitely sounds more like A.O. Scott. Uh, and I'm not always like that. I mean, I feel like I'm a tourist down to the bone at this point. But for example, I don't. Did you see Cry Macho?
Did I see what?
Cry Macho? Did you see the
No, I
last
haven't
one?
seen Cry Macho yet. I haven't seen the last. I haven't seen it since Sully. I think I've missed everything.
Since Sully. Oh boy.
Yeah,
Um,
after
well, Cry Macho was like, in theory, a very lovely movie, but I feel watching it, I kept thinking to myself, um, I could see this working if Clint had made this in like 2006, because he's like a 90-year-old man doing this, and it feels like it's more like a 65-year-old man or a 70-year-old man. But Clint in that movie at 90 feels like just like a skeleton walking around. It's very distracting. But anyway, I'm not in the tank, I would say. I mean, I still have my critical faculties about me. I can say that, maybe that one didn't work. But Richard Jewell, before this, which is a very closely related film to Juror Number Two because it's kind of a system movie. It's what happens when an ordinary person kind of enters a system, whether it's the law, whether it's like the media, and all these things, and kind of what happens when an individual goes up against that system, when it enters it, how it affects them, how they react to it, etc. In this case, um, it's it's very much of it stars. This is what Nicholas Holt.
Yep.
Uh, Honestly, I don't think I've seen the film in forever. I can't remember the last time I saw him in a movie. Uh, he's the juror number two, who may or may have not had something to do with the trial that the film is uh, is showing us. And obviously when the system that the juror number two is about is the justice system in America, how it works, how it doesn't work. Literally, I think every single character, or at least every lawyer or judge, at one point says, it's not a great system, but it's what we have.
It's what we got.
Um, and something that I think is interesting is that I feel like Eastwood's able to see kind of the good and the bad of the system pretty, like, I guess he's able to kind of see how it might work, how it might not work, how it can be manipulated, how it can be used to punish someone, how it can go against the principle of everything. It's kind of it's a pretty slippery movie, even though I feel like even though people talk it as this kind of classical thing, as this thing like this film that could have been taking place in the 90s or something like that, but it feels very much in conversation with those critiques that he's making in Richard Jewell and Sully about the way that these individuals kind of have to go up against these systems. Very possibly libertarian uh, critique, but that one's fascinating either way. What did you think, Siva?
So I liked it a lot. I'm going to talk about what I liked first, and then I'll talk about the rest. But yeah, I liked it a lot. It's also been, I don't know, it's a time when I'm not excited to go watch American movies in the cinema anymore. This is one I've been anticipating for a very long time. Really, it was just Trap in this year, as far as I can remember, that I was excited to go see. So um, I was happy to go see it. I saw it with a full crowd, and it was so great to watch it with a crowd who reacted to everything that's happening in the movie, and that felt very old fashioned to me. I don't get that experience often. It's four people in the movie theater, one is just wandering around AMC, going from cinema hall to cinema hall and falling asleep. So it was great to watch the movie like that, and people gasping at certain moments when they realize what is actually being shown on screen, etc. um I agree that it's a systems movie. I think that but I feel like I think it's less even handed. I don't think the movie is not even handed, but I think it has a more um tainted view of the system than positive, more negative than positive, I would
Yeah,
say. And I don't think it is that there is a proposition that there is a better system. I think Clint and all of us kind of believe that this is the system, this is what we got, this is the best we got, this is what we have to work with. What does that mean then when we are faced with a situation like this, right? And I think it's telling that the movie begins with the the to be mother blindfolded. She looks like a saint, really, the wife
yeah.
character,
I mean, it's like
and she's
it's
being
mirroring the justice thing.
right, and
Yeah,
she's walking around, and she can't see, and then he reveals the room to her, and then very soon after that, it takes away from the suburban, perfect idyllic family to Nicholas Hult's character just being in the jury room, and the movie is pretty quick about
yeah,
letting us know that he is not just another juror in the movie. He is involved in the case in a more intense way than any of the other people in the jury room or in the courtroom. Um, and I think my favorite part of the movie is the flashbacks.
Hmm.
And what I think a lot of movies like this often tend to do is use the flashbacks to create ambiguity. So it shows us the same scene over and over again, and we see it, almost like a kaleidoscope. We see it, we tilt the lens a little bit different, and it looks a little different each time. In this movie, I felt like every time I see it, and this could be just my point of view, I've seen opinions on the internet to the contrary, but to me, it was very clear that it's very clear what happened in the movie. Who did what and what the outcome was is very clearly established in those flashback shots. Everybody can see what's happening. And so it's not so much about the justice system being problematic because we only know what we know or we can only see what we see. It is that even when faced with all of the information, what are we capable of doing with it? How do we weigh what we know? Whose life is worth keeping? Whose life is expendable? Who is deserving of punishment and who is deserving of forgiveness? I really think those are the questions that the movie is most interested in and what I found most interesting. And it really made me question, like, should we even be, are we allowed to play God in this manner? These systems are established because we don't have an external power to come make our justice. The world and the universe is chaotic and arbitrary. Can we do better? And I'm not sure that maybe a little.
With the flashbacks, it felt like, it wasn't like, oh, we're adding piece by a little bit, like piece by piece, building out the picture of exactly what happened. And maybe there's a little bit to that. It felt more like with each flashback, we were kind of getting closer and closer to kind of the that main character's like state of mind.
Mind.
Basically, as he's able to, as almost like you're almost building into like a close up of the character, like looking into that drink and trying to decide if he's going to do it or not, because that's what that evening meant to him. Was this incredibly painful evening where he almost relapses, doesn't, but then still like basically is going to maybe ruin his life because of an accident. And I specifically like the part where they went to, I think, the when they went to the bar itself, like the whole all the jurors go to the bar to see it, and he's just like in the flash, like in the flashback there is just like just to almost like gain access to his mind, like to get back into that mood. Everything, all the flashbacks are really about kind of like situating this character into making a moral decision, and putting him into the headspace where he has to choose, where he has to choose between himself and this other person. And the entire movie is building into like this realization that kind of like how self-serving you can be, how you can justify anything, uh like to get away, to kind of protect yourself, protect your family. At the beginning of the movie, when you're seeing those shots of like the nursery, that's what's at stake for this character, is his
Hmm.
entire future, is his way of life. And even if we go to the very ending of the movie, to the last shot, where it's just like a series of like alternating like reverse shots, medium shots of two characters looking at each other, and it's just like, here's like, he opens the door, and this is what he was trying to get away from, and it's now at his house, now it's there, like, and like everything is building to that moment. That ending in particular is such a, it's it's very finite, right? Where like the movie doesn't, it feels like, I don't like comparing Clint to like classical stuff, classical filmmaking, classical Hollywood and stuff like that, because I feel like, sure, it makes sense, but in a way also it doesn't really. But in this one, the ending is one where immediately it ends. There's no like denouement. As soon as you realize what's going on, the movie ends. It doesn't give you a single thing more than that because you want to leave the theater in that note of ambiguity of like, okay, how do you feel about this? Like, and to me, that's kind of why it goes back into the idea of and to how these individuals kind of navigate the system, right? When they go at the beginning and everyone's trying to get out of a jury duty,
Jury
everyone's
duty.
looking out for their own self interest. They're like, oh, they got to look after the kids. They have the high pregnancy, the high risk pregnancy. Everyone has their reasons why they don't want to do this, but they still have to participate. So even if they don't want to do it, they still have to go through this process. They're still going to go through this system, which is meant to try to find is trying to meant to arrive at an answer, but at the end all you just have are feelings, right? You might like at the end of this movie you might think you know what happened, but you're never really sure because it's not like for example, it's not like that character saw what he hit, it's like
Yes.
so, but it's very likely. So like if we were in that jury, if we were in that jury and we thought that maybe he did hit something, but you don't know what he hit. So it's very likely that he hit her, that he hit the woman, but you're not sure. He didn't see it, and he could have hit something else. You don't know.
No, I agree. But the point is that the jury is not, he is not the one on trial. There's another human life on trial. And whether or not we are certain that he did it, are we certain that the other person did it? And I think what is interesting to me is that every person on that jury, Nicholas Holt's motivations are more clear, right? Especially like you said, as we see the flashbacks over and over, and we get to see more and more of his mind and his life, and he is starting to realize what's at stake because he talks to his sponsor at AA. He knows what the outcome will be if when his sponsor tells him, you know what, uh, you're going to go away for life because they're going to bring in the alcoholism thing. So he knows now exactly how the what the stakes are for him. So I understand him. But what's interesting to me is that everyone else on the jury also has their own personal bias that kind of makes them want to crucify this guy who's on trial. Whether it's that guy has a neck tattoo and I know that he's a drug dealer and I protect youth and he sells drugs to youth, so he's the villain. The character, the juror, basically says that. So everybody has their own sort of. In some ways, nobody really wants to. None of us are able to execute what the actual task at hand is, which is only look at what is in front of you. Are you 100% certain, without any reasonable doubt, that this person murdered this woman? It's not Nicholas Hoult on trial, but do we know that the other person is guilty?
Yeah, I mean, I think Eastwood has a very jaundiced view of these systems. In Richard Jewell, for example, like the whole movie is basically him being like railroaded because the FBI or whatever does absolutely no investigation. In here, it's very similar where they have where one of the jury members basically calls him out and says, "Hey," because he's a former police officer, former detective. It's like, "Hey, you didn't look at anyone else," and like all like this investigation by the police, which was accepted and not questioned at all by the prosecutor, is is very one track minded. It's and I think he says they get tunnel vision when things kind of make sense, and they just follow that and they don't look at anything else. Because as soon as anyone starts pulling at the string, they are going to find something that is beyond that puts it beyond the reasonable doubt that was murder. Um, Something that was very interesting about 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 this film, and I guess is kind of the structure of it, um, because we go through every step of the process, right? We go through the jury selection, where they're asked like the questions to do what's it called, voir dire or whatever, to to object to particular jurors to select them. Then you go through the opening arguments, you go through witnesses, question, interrogation or whatever. And Nicholas Holt's character is kind of just sitting there, and he's just kind of reacting. He's listening to what's going on, and sometimes we have the flashbacks, but a lot of the early parts of the movie are just him reacting because you're not sure what he's thinking. You kind of understand that like the moral implication, but he's not saying anything. He's just kind of like sinking into his seat, and that kind of because basically the movie is given over to the lawyers. The movie is given to the lawyers, to the witnesses, and it's kind of becomes like a courtroom drama basically. Then we go into jury deliberations, and jury deliberations is kind of when he becomes an active participant because he has to make a moral choice. He has to intervene somehow. He has to find a way to get this guy off because he's pretty sure he's not guilty, but also not incriminate himself. And that's when he becomes more of an active participant. We get all like the backstory, like, oh, he has his recovery chip. We hear about the previous miscarriages with his wife. We hear about like his accident and how it turned his life around. It's in the deliberations and kind of those 12 angry men moments where I think Eastwood, and I guess the character becomes more of an active participant in the story. And it's also there where I think you get that, um, I guess the focus more on how different strata of society would kind of basically would care about this. There are people who I think like the wife, like not like the jury, I guess, what do you call it, the jury
Oh
president, right?
yeah, whoever she is, yeah, the one who
Yeah, the
facilitates.
one
Yeah,
who's like the leader basically.
yeah,
She's in charge, and you have like a guy who is like he's divorced and he has very particular biases. You have the stoner kid. You have the ones who are talking about how he's like a macho guy, so he sucks, so he has to pay. Basically, he's the enemy or whatever. So it becomes like this little microcosm of society where they all can bounce their ideas around and try to get at truth. Which again, I think the movie is at points to the movie paints it as it's not, you can never really arrive at truth, and the movie is not really so much isn't the truth so much about the morality of making a choice. Uh, like what do you do when you're confronted with that truth? Basically what would you do scenario where you have to choose between yourself and someone else,
yep,
and kind of what that having to make that choice, what that does to you, what it does to your soul, what it does to your family, what it does to basically all the relationships around you. That's kind of what I found fascinating about the movie, was because it feels like the more he has to equivocate and kind of have to lie and manipulate, the more he kind of is giving up any sort of any of the moral high ground, right? I did find it pretty funny when he talks to Kiefer Sutherland, his AA sponsor slash attorney, and basically tells him, "Yeah, you need to commit more crimes if you want to get away with this. Like you need to tamper
yeah,
the jury, like manipulate everyone." And uh, that was a particularly funny part of the movie.
yeah. I found what you said. So I've seen some comparisons to Trap. I know you. I don't think you've seen that,
I
right?
haven't seen it
You
yet.
missed that. Yeah, but Trap, in the sense that Trap also is about this white suburban family man who has a secret, right? And it comes out, and his family is unaware of it. And then the second half of the movie brings him back inside the house, similar to Nicholas Hood, kind of coming back from jury duty, in the evenings, and his wife starting to realize what has happened. So people have drawn comparisons to that. But I also thought about Cabin in the Woods, in that it's more about what you just said, which is, what do you do when it's a choice between, what if we are confronted with the idea of it's either me or it's someone else? And in Cabin in the Woods, it's literally, it's either me, my spouse, or my child. One of us got to go. It's who do I protect? Myself or someone else? And uh, here it is just, it's just another human being, right? A stranger, really. And I think that, for me, I mean, I already have, I mean, my own thoughts on, like, how I feel about incarceration and the jury system and all that. So, but the idea of, I think, since a very young age, the idea of letting someone else take blame for something I have done is so repugnant to me, that I found that notion of that part of the movie, that the movie is bringing that, dramatizing that, very powerful, especially in the world we live in now, where I think, even more than, I mean, it's not 12 Angry Men, right? I think that now we are even more given to having pretty fixed determinations on, like, being having stereotypes, let's say,
Hmm.
even more, I think, more easily, and ideologies that we hold so close and that define our personality, that we want to stick to them. Like, that's why so many people in the jury room, everybody has their own, like, personal identity, what they come as. I'm the teacher, I'm the father of a daughter, I'm a young woman who believes women should never be abused. The very fact that they, or like the young couple, the young man and the young woman in the jury, just decide that he was abusive.
Hmm.
Nobody has seen their relationship. Everything is the bar reenactment scenes. Only you and I and the audience are seeing it. They are not actually seeing what happened at the bar. They are just hearing some server, bartenders,
Yeah.
hears say of it. So I found all that very terrifying, and it made me not want to have any power over anything ever again.
Yeah, I mean, the whenever Eastwood films these, well, as I say, a lot of the what's interesting about latter day Eastwood is how, I guess, how fascinated he is by like regular everyday like
People.
settings. Yeah, people, settings. Like, there's something very banal about like his like frames, where it's just like they're stuff with little bric-a-brac of like everyday life. Like, I would feel like you believe like those settings are exactly like that. And he's never like, oh, we're going to like heighten something, we're never going to like elevate or stylize it beyond having like this very, maybe like throwing some shadows around or something like that. uh,
Yeah.
he's very, I think his gaze is just very interested in recording kind of what these living rooms look like, what this jury duty room looks like, what the, I was wondering actually when this movie takes place. I couldn't, because he was like trying to sell a 1996 Toyota 4Runner, I think. Is that what?
Yeah, and also, like, there's some election news on the radio when he's driving initially, uh, to
Yeah,
court.
because I was trying to think like when does this take place, because
But I
also
don't remember what the news
they,
is.
the prosecutors also like googling people. I did find
Yeah,
it
yeah.
funny how she can how she googles him and it just adds wife and just put like 10 pictures of him show up. uh, Something that and I guess we can talk a little bit more, maybe more broadly about Eastwood. Um,
I think, although what you said, I totally agree with you on that with regards to Eastwood, and that's kind of what I actually found a little lacking in this movie. the portrayal of the everyday and buying that these spaces are all real. The bar, I thought there's only really three spaces that we move
Yeah, yeah,
between for the most part. There's the courtroom and the where the juror and the jury room,
yeah,
which I consider one space. The house they live in and the bar. Right, that's mainly where we are most of the time.
yeah.
But I mean, I also, you know this, I watched rewatched for the hundredth time Bridges of Madison County just a week or 10 days prior to going to watch Juror number 2. And in that movie, I've really, rewatching it just made me feel even more like I know everybody in that town. When the two kids are just naming names of neighbors, I'm like, I know who those people are. And here I somehow didn't get that. In the opening sequence, when they go into their porch and all the people are gathered for the baby shower or whatever it is that their party they are having, and he declares, we didn't know whether we should do this, but we decided to do it anyway. And then you realize, oh, it's a some kind of baby shower thing. Those people come and we never see them again. I never got the sense that these people have neighbors or family or friends or anything. That's how anybody ever comes into that apartment besides the one time Tony Collette shows up. Something about that house and their life just felt so isolated to me. And on the one hand, I can understand, not the Halloween scene. The Halloween scene, the kids, that's, I was there. I was so
Yeah, yeah,
happy when that happened because I was like, oh, thank the Lord. I can see neighbors all of a sudden. There is actually life. Otherwise, it really looked like a dead town to me somehow. And it's things like that that I didn't love about the movie. And I wondered what it is, because I was thinking about, and this is not, I like the movie, but I'm going to say it anyway. I mean, I think Trap and this movie have the same budget. Trap has an entire concert for like the
yeah.
more than the first half of the movie. There's like, I don't even know how many crowd scenes, how many floors in a arena, and people everywhere. It feels like a city panicked over a serial killer. And here I just felt like, besides the jury, the prosecutor, the public defender, and these two people, I just didn't feel like there's any life in this town. Like the bar, yeah, sure.
It is. It does remind me of kind of like those like I don't know if they're like the Poverty Row like films where they have like two or three sets and that's it, and the entire movie takes place in those two or three sets. In that way, it's a little bit abstract because, like you say, there's no sense of greater life beyond these sets. So everything that is kind of concentrated into the living room, the kitchen of their house, is concentrated in the deliberation room. It's concentrated in the courthouse. So it doesn't in the bar, and it's just kind of like they're almost like these psychic spaces that he's visiting um, throughout the movie. But it's never like, to me, there's a certain level of detail in his films that it feels like a real place that people live on, like that people live in. It doesn't feel like, oh, this is a set. It's more like, oh, they actually found a house that looks like this, and they probably decorated it or whatever, but it does feel like lived in. There's a part in Richard Jewell, for example, where like the FBI people like wreck Richard Jewell's house, and I think they take like Tupperware from his mom's kitchen or something, right? And they take it as evidence. And then I think they write on it. They write something on it, and it won't come off. When they give it back, it won't come off anymore. Those type of
Yeah.
little details that suggest like people actually living a life in a room and in a space. That's the kind of thing that I think he's pretty interested in. Like you don't see like kitchens and a lot of rooms like this in a lot of American cinema because everything, at least a lot of the things that we see, are so heightened and are so kind of maybe afraid of showing something that's maybe like lower middle class or like even or something that's not, like, I mean, in Trap, it's, like a big pop concert and it's, I guess, supposed to be what, Philadelphia. Um,
Yeah,
you know,
always.
yeah, always, yeah. But in these movies, it's very much whatever he's shooting it with a level of interest and like, oh, maybe not anthropological, but it's still like trying to capture something about these spaces that I find very, very novel compared to like other
I agree with that on the other movies, and I think you pointed exactly. I would have liked to see their kitchen. Maybe if I saw them even making one thing or having breakfast before he leaves for jury duty, just cereal, really. I would have bought it. Something about it. Like even the photographs when Tony Collette comes into the house, the photographs are right there. Like, in it just felt like somebody remembered, oh yeah, we must have photographs of the married couple there. To me, it all just didn't feel and I love that about his other films. So I think maybe that's why I was noticing this, and I wondered about. I also saw like Desplechin's Roublé own film or something. It's called. It's a police procedural set in the town of his birth, and but I I really love it when the movie evokes that sense of place, right? And I think Clint does it like masterfully in so many other films. And here I know it's Georgia, but I
yeah.
never really got um I wish I had the same reaction as you. I wish what I had seen had made me feel like I know this house, I know this place, and I know who lives here.
I feel like it gives you just enough to kind of believe it. Like there's an election going on, so she has like a little bit of a press conference, but not like, it's not like a wide shot showing a huge crowd. It's just like a little like
Right.
a medium
Yeah.
shot with a few reporters. And I don't know, maybe that's some sort of, I don't know when this was shot, but I imagine there was like COVID, maybe a COVID shoot as well.
Yeah.
Maybe there was
Possibly.
some restrictions like that. But I would feel like Eastwood's not very fussy when it comes to things like that. I don't. I wonder, like, I wonder what his trap would look like. What his trap would look like.
Yeah, and I don't just mean the concert scene, by the way. Because Tap also has a suburban home that we see. So my comparison is more the two suburban
Yeah.
homes than the concert. Just saying.
Um, this movie is a weird spot. Um, we both saw it in the theater. We don't know how long it's gonna
It's going
last
to
in the
be there.
theater. I think maybe I've seen conflicting numbers of how many theaters it was actually released in the United States. I've seen 30. I've seen like 50, something maybe 50 tops. And then
Yeah,
there were reports this week that they were going to basically play for like 1 week, and it was going to go
yeah.
to like VOD later in the year. And then there were also reports that they're going to do like a small awards campaign for it. I mean, I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I read
Uh,
that.
um, but it begs the point. I mean, this movie is not like a catastrophe, and it's not like a radically, even like an experimental film or even like a weird film, like maybe like I know I like the what's it called, like the 1517 to Paris or whatever.
Yeah.
That one is
Or,
like it's a very, very different type of movie. This is very, again, I don't like to say classically constructed, or because I feel like Clint has always been the kind of guy who interrogates those things, who goes
Mhm.
against kind of the classic thing. But now, because he's been doing it for like 60 years now, it becomes classicism because he's just been doing it for so long
For
that
so long.
it just, right, like this movie could have been made in the 90s, right, and literally nothing would be like different. Nothing I think would be different about it. But I don't think that is saying that it's I don't think that's really saying so much about Clint, so much about the movies that are made now, that it looks so different. um it's a weird spot. It's a weird spot for Juror number two because, like I was saying, it's a very like accessible mainstream film that is not getting any sort of like wide release. In Texas, for example, in Dallas, we have two theaters showing it, but I think in Houston, maybe I don't think it's showing at all, and that's like one of
Yeah.
the biggest cities in the United States. Um, and the only reason that anyone can come up with for why this is happening was because basically the CEO of what is it,
Warner,
the Warner Brothers
Warner
Discovery,
Brothers.
yeah, the 90 Day Fiance, the home of 90 Day Fiance, uh,
Yes.
uh,
Basement
David
it partially.
David Zaslav, personally responsible for 90 Day Fiance, basically said, "What are you guys doing releasing Cry Macho if you didn't want to? If it wasn't going to make money, why'd you do it?" And I was like, "Well, he's made us a lot of money, so why not?"
Yeah,
And basically they're just doing it to screw Clint, even though like this could have been a profitable movie. I mean, it's a that trailer is actually really good.
yeah,
Do you remember the American Sniper trailer
yeah.
with like with Bradley Cooper
Bradley
and
Cooper. Yeah, I saw
like
that movie.
they're
It
gonna like
hits
shoot
later.
he's gonna like shoot the kid or whatever. It's like, oh my
Yeah,
god, this is insane. It's kind of very like that.
yeah,
It immediately throws you into what the movie is, what the stakes are, what the moral implications of the story could be. And it really makes no sense that you would treat a filmmaker of his stature, has been making films for 60 years, won Oscars. The Mule made like 100 something million a few years ago,
yep.
that you would do this. What what do we do with that? What do we do with the fact that we have a major studio that seems to be basically anti-artist?
I don't know the answer to that because
Like it's weird. It's
yeah,
it's
it's
weird
weird.
that this is the position that a major studio would take. Uh,
Yeah, also like really this time of the year, like the holidays, so many of my friends, because everyone gets together with family. There's not much you can do with family because there's only so much talking you can do. So a lot of people like go out to movies with their family. And I really think this is the kind of movie that I could convince like a whole family to go to. And they would all kind of, because, I mean, they may not all like it equally, but they would all come out for it. So it's really surprising to me that they literally did not want to make money on this movie just in order to like have this kind of, power thing
yeah,
work out for them.
it's only in the United States because in other countries it's getting a wide release. It's just here that
Yeah, I also think that the movie really, I mean, I really like Nicholas Hoult in the movie. And I think, he's young, he's very good looking. He's actually perfectly cast as the person you don't want anything bad happening to.
yeah,
I think a lot of I think a lot of moms would have gone to the movie, and I know what my mom's verdict would be on the whole thing, for example. So I mean, I just think this is it's really depressing, all of it. That like the just the powerlessness that filmmakers have
and
when it comes to distribution of
yeah,
their films.
like you were talking about earlier with the issues with the Tamil filmmakers and
Yeah,
Deepika Banerjee of getting their movies out and seen is because basically the the people in charge really aren't movie people, right?
yeah,
They're corporate guys who, like, I think David Zaslav, does he care if he does he care at all about Clint Eastwood? Sure, maybe he liked one or two of his movies, but it's not about that. He's about like, trying to manage the debt that this company has and trying to just slash the debt. Um, and in the case of like a filmmaker like Banerjee, he's just at the mercy of a corporation that does not want to offend a political party in India, and that's it.
yeah,
And he can't. There's nothing he can do about it. And if, for example, if Warner Brothers or Max or whoever the hell is whatever the hell it is saying, you know what, we'd rather delete your movie from the hard drives to write it
yeah.
off and get a tax write off rather than
Than
make any money and like have to owe something like to anyone.
yeah, and it's really upsetting because Clint's movies have made so much money for so long. He's so good at like working on the budget and on
Yeah,
budget
and
and
even the ones that are maybe like Cry Macho didn't make a lot of money, but that was literally during COVID. That was
yeah,
like
exactly.
2021.
Nobody went out.
But his previous Richard Jewell was kind of a bomb, unfortunately. But that's a movie that is not. I don't think it was hugely expensive. It's like we're not talking like $200 million bombs that
Yeah.
like superhero movies, like the Joker movie, which is you
Yeah.
know
And I think, I mean, I know we've talked about this, and I think everybody feels this way that uh, the non $200 million movies, like so few of them seem to exist now that are not just Netflix movies, that you
yeah.
can go out and see in a theater. And like Clint is one of those filmmakers that can get people to come out and see. He can make those movies, he can cast those movies, and he can get people to go out and see them. So that
Yeah,
hardly any of us got to see it is,
it's only people who kind of are in a certain point of their career who can make movies like this. Shyamalan finances his own movies basically, right?
right.
He worked with like what was it, Blumhouse or whatever,
Yeah.
and but he's paying for his own movies himself, and he's able to do
Yeah.
that. He retains the power, and he works with a distributor, with Universal or whoever to release the movies. And Clint, because he's been around so long, also has a little bit of power that he can still get things made. But for a newer filmmaker,
Yeah.
you unless you're making like mumblecore type movies for nothing,
Yeah.
or
Or
horror, that seems to be the thing. Or you're gonna be like, all right, well, either this or you make a $200 million movie for where you have no control, that someone is shooting your action scenes for you because they don't trust you. It's
yeah.
a it's very depressing. A late in the game camera change,
Camera switch.
the camera switch. No, but I mean, I think everywhere, every industry is feeling some sort of version of this, where it becomes very hard to make things at a certain budget level unless you're your own producer, and then you have to kind of find an an economy to make that work. Whether that means casting huge stars like a Vikram or whatever for
Yeah.
Paranjit, um, or like working with Netflix. But then if you work with Netflix, you can't. It looks like you're going to be limited to what you can do, and you're not going
Yeah.
to have a
It's
theatrical release. Uh, it's just a very depressing. I wonder. I don't want to. I don't want to say things out loud regarding Clint and his advanced age. But if he does make another movie, I wonder if it'll still be like with the same company. And I wonder like what it would
yeah.
look like for Clint to make a movie at another company. Like was that
All I can tell you, John, is that I read online that he's reading scripts and that he's been coming to the office every day. And I have a lot of faith that there will be another Clint movie.
I- you know
And secretly, I hope he doesn't do it with these people, um, and that everyone gets to see it. I'm all for filmmakers. I like living to 110, 115, give or take, at
I don't
least.
know, 100. How old was Manuel Oliveira when he passed away? He was like
100,
107, 108,
I don't know,
something insane.
something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so Clint still has a lot of years left in him.
Yeah.
Juror number 2, I really liked. It's actually probably one of my favorite movies, and I don't see a lot of movies. Um, I don't see a lot of movies. I think you probably see more than I do. But it's one of my favorite ones so far this year. Um, like A.O. Scott says, I'm in the tank for for
Yeah.
Clint.
Yeah. I haven't really thought about ranking all the movies yet, but I'm sure it'll come up either on Lucky Star or who knows, another podcast. Hopefully not. But
I
but
think
um but yeah, I think that one thing, and this is kind of, a little, and I don't mean this just about Lucky Star, but I think everything we've talked about, the kind of the bleak situation when it comes to distribution, to public funding of film, political control of film content and distribution and everything. I think to me, it just makes it so much more important that if you really believe in the medium and have the kind of affection for it that I think both you and I shared. I mean, we've been talking about films since you were, I don't know, 17 or 18 years old, I think. And so, and it hasn't stopped. Our lives have moved on, but what's remained constant is that we continue to watch films and talk about them. And it brings us a lot of happiness to do that. So I think talking about, the films that we think um, are vibrant is important, all the more important now than when all these movies were getting released. People could go to festivals and watch these movies. When filmmakers had money to make more movies, and it wasn't taking them like 4 years to go
Yeah,
from making a movie to releasing it, etc. So I think all the more reason why people should be discussing them, writing about them, and trying to, make people watch them however you can.
yeah. I think that's a good place to end this initial episode of the Lucky Star podcast. We're gonna do one every day from now on. We're gonna do another one.
Tomorrow breakfast.
um, Once again, the Lucky Star Film Podcast. I don't know if that's the official title that we're going with.
It
Lucky
is.
Star Podcast, sure, is an
What's
extension
the
of
website? What's the website? I
uh,
haven't done that in a while.
wow. It's an extension of the Lucky Star Film.net, and I imagine that if you are seeing this, you're probably on YouTube. You should like and subscribe. Always wanted to say that. You should like and subscribe. Um, Sima, this was wonderful. I really enjoyed talking. Juror number 2, Clint Eastwood. Uh, Great guy, never done anything wrong in his life.
Still
Uh,
made one of the greatest movies ever made.
yeah, like three, at least three. Is
At
that
least three,
at least let's see.
five, maybe.
He's made a lot of great movies.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, you know what? You know what's a really underrated one is Hereafter. Have you seen that? Have you seen Hereafter?
Yeah,
I love that one. I need to
yeah.
watch it again actually, and maybe we'll talk about it one day.
I'll watch Richard Jones soon.
Well, so we might do another podcast soon. I don't know how soon, relatively, but we're going to look at the schedule and we will decide what is important and what is not. And we will talk about only what is important and good and interesting to us.
As always.
Maybe.
As always. Thank you, John. It was fun talking to you after 2 decades like this. I mean,
Yeah, it's been. Uh, so once again, visit theluckystarfilm.net. We are trying to write more things for it more frequently. I do bi-weekly grids where we do a little bit of piece of writing plus our ratings to some of the things we've been seeing. We do translations of stuff. We interview a few people. We do crazy festival pieces. Yeah,
yeah.
it's a lot of fun. Once again, my name is John Hernandez, co-editor of Lucky Star, and Seema
And
Pai.
Seema Pai, dormant member of Lucky Star.
Well, Seema, it was great talking to you. Hopefully, we do this again.
Likewise. Have a great night.